Hello, dear friends and colleagues. It's a great pleasure for me and real honor to be here. And I would like to express my thanks to Dr. Balavenkat and Ganga Hospital for inviting me to deliver this talk. It's part of my several years long PhD study process. I defended this PhD in the field of epidemiology and public health, and I got plenty of results. Of course, it's very late and it's tiring for all of us. I'm not going to tell you all about that. I'm just going to tell you a few things that I found very interesting or maybe very important. The outline of those few things are that I'm going to touch the problem of manpower we are facing globally. As you know, I'm also here with several hats on, so I'm representing active clinicians and researcher in that field. I'm also WFSA chair of education committee. So I'm pretty much involved in informations that goes from around the world, and of course I will said some few things about provoking the burnout in our profession, symptoms, results of our research, and hopefully something about coping strategies. And we all heard a few days ago at the Leadership Summit and talk of my colleague Wayne Morris, and also you all are aware of serious shortage of anesthesiologists globally. And if I may compare several results from, or actually data from very developed and high or middle or low income countries, you can see how tremendous the changes are between countries and differences. For example, some majority of European countries has around 10 anesthetists per 100,000 people, and Ethiopia, for example, has 0.02 per 100,000. It means 97 million inhabitants in Ethiopia has only 23 anesthetists. And can you imagine the level of their engagement and of their job? And sometime when I think of somebody who just cover all these fields, and some countries or some anesthetists are not stuck just in the operation theaters, we are all doing ambulatory, regional obstetrics, pediatrics, cardiac, thoracic, and all those fields. I'm not going to read them all. Can you imagine what's the number of just changing the scrubs during the day or changing the curtains, white curtains? So I think we are doing it more than American futuristic superhero Superman. So that was my feeling. And if you just think of our rhythm during the day, and of course even more during the night, and if you are aware how important this circadian rhythm goes during the day and night, and because of, not just because we are tired, but because of reasons for that, and that's the secretion of multiple influences on our wakeness or sleepness. So real problem starts because we are forced to work against our nature and against our personal capacities. And if I tell you that I have at least 5 to 7 hospital duties with overnight stays in hospital, somewhere in between 3 in the morning and 5 in the morning, if I'm whatever I should do, I can face moments of micro sleepness. It means several seconds of complete absence. Then I am actually endangering my patient. And with the guilty feeling that I may lose some of my patients, I am suffering a lot. And even that dramatic approach, it seems that literature that are not so actually accurate, I found, but this is very nice systematic review that shows that although much higher incidence reports or adverse effects are happening in other fields, especially in surgical fields, always is anesthesiologist one that has that guilty feeling, and that it's really, although its numbers very low, for example 2% or 0.7%. Nevertheless, all these things, including several more, are main reasons that doctors, actually all professionals, but I am focused on anesthesiologists, can feel the guilty feeling and unsuccessful in his life. So work overload, lack of control of environment, insufficient reward, unfairness from the department or from the its own working environment, as I said. Then community values that are very often shaken and break down. So if somebody feels that he was not valued enough or get the enough satisfaction in his job, however he was superb or efficient, then it can provoke also problems. And very often we are mixing the stress and burnout, and there are some differences. There are serious differences between stress and burnout. And stress sometimes can be very efficient, can be actually productive, and can turn on people working more and be eager more for better success. Unfortunately, if it's too long and if it's too tiring, and if it's multiple influencing on the person from various fields, for example, lack of recognition in family problems, or not so good incomes, or so on, there are plenty of reasons, or simply mental instability. So each one of us can be aware of our personal limitations when we are choosing our profession, if it's possible. And if it's too long and it lasts for more than it's possible for that person to cope with, then it starts burning out and declining the function, and that affects the productivity seriously. And then I suppose we all know the situations where we cannot help ourselves even with the jar of coffee or with some other things. So we can face physical, mental or emotional, as well as behavioral symptoms of recognizing the burnout. So physical symptoms are mostly a feeling of endless tiredness and energy exhaustion. We feel like changing our appetite or sleep habit. So we are either overeating or fast. We are not interested in that field anymore. Headaches, back pain, muscle ache, you name it. Most of those problems are not really actually physical reasons, but emotional reasons, cardiovascular, of course, and so on. I don't want to go through all the bullets here, but we have to be aware that physical symptoms are just a way that we should change something in our behavior. Emotional symptoms and signs can be very hidden, and we should department usually don't recognize it in time, or we don't recognize it in time. So we are feeling like failure. We are not confident enough. We feel trapped and trying and actually becoming detachment to our own job, our own patients, our own families, and we are becoming cynical to our environment. We are blaming anything else unless ourself or our mental health status. So increasingly cynical and negative outlook can seriously put in danger any system, health system I mean, and it's very, very dangerous. It endangers patient safety, and I will get to that back. So behavioral symptoms are that our colleagues who are suffering of that problem are sometimes withdrawn or unresponsive, sometimes are very angry, they're accident prone, tearful, they are abusing the medications or alcohol, or even very often not appear at their own departments, or using the sick days increasingly. So there are a number of things that we can observing and then recognize that problem. Implications are serious, and then they are divided to us as professionals and to patients as our recipients of our health care. And as practitioners, we can be very seriously disturbed. Our families also, even some suicides. A lot of people in Western countries are deciding to change their job, so turnover intentions, drug or alcohol abuse, as I told you. And I'm happy to just go briefly through my recent publication last year. That is one of the papers that is result of research of my PhD study from that field. I actually performed cross-sectional survey in Belgrade University anesthesia departments. Serbia is 7 million population, so according to your numbers of more than billion, it may be sound insignificant, but 272 specialists in anesthesia in Belgrade University departments is whole population. So it's very much important from statistical point of view, and we had very good setup of research. One of the potential problem was that 70% of our colleagues are females. Actually, I was looking in the data of national data. It seems that medical field in Serbia is pretty much run and governed by women, so we are not equal there, and 30% are males. So it will appear as very important later on. We used a battery of tests in that research, and I will stick this time just in the burnout, but I want to inform you that we used the Maslach burnout inventory, human services survey, Beck's depression inventory, generic measure, SF36 for self-evaluation of quality of life, and Krupp's fatigues inventory. So all these later on became very important in our results. This is the overview of all three areas that our measure are gone into. So we used very specific formula, not used so often in literature, just once or twice I found in some North European countries, in Norway and in Finland. So it means that they use high criteria, being very much interested in quality of life of their doctors. And although not the highest number as we have written in some South American studies or other studies that are not properly based scientifically, we faced actually total burnout of 6.3, which is high enough. That means that all three areas of that we measured in personal accomplishment, depersonalization, and emotional exhaustion are actually in highest level. As you can see on the graph, emotional exhaustion is tremendously high. It means that our colleagues, 2/3 of our colleagues are completely exhausted in this profession, and this is probably due to our lack of manpower and manpower shortage, so we are working overtime, and that creates the problems. And of course, depersonalization, although the highest level is just 12.2, I think cumulative with moderate level, that's 20, it gives 40% together. It's big danger for our patients if they are cynical and not and detached to results of their own work. So also problematic situation. I'm not going to go into all the results because I have sense of shortage of time, but the very important results are that males in Serbia, although in minority in our field, don't feel like they are threatened with that. Most often, women are prone to this feeling of burnout, and what I found very, very important and published that anesthesiologists are satisfied with working conditions, that are satisfied with working conditions, are more prone to emotional exhaustion. So for the moment we thought it's strange, but then we realized that people who are satisfied with working conditions means that they are well equipped, well provided, and then can you imagine the number of opportunity to sense the hypotension, whatever can go wrong, you can immediately detect that problem, and then you are highly tensed by all those signs or beepers or lights, and that was major reason. And of course, very important results in depersonalization that I found, and I already told you, this is important, that people who are very much involved in education of other peoples, for example, who have additional training in anesthesia, means postgraduate studies, postdocs, MBAs, and so on, they are more prone to the burnout because they are highly compatible between each other. They are running the departments, they are doing the teachers, they have clinical job also, and they are much more prone to this problem than in the other population. So this is the result of burnout, and as I said, academic education increased probability of total burnout by 272%. Coping strategies. This is something very, very hard to deliver to the audience who are so dedicated to its job. All anesthetists are actually living the anesthesia. I'm not sure, I met anesthesiologists who are not doing overtime, giving the most of its personal and family time to his work. So we have to change that habit. We have to take signs we are feeling and take them very seriously. We should find a way to say no to additional workload, although it's sometimes not possible to do it. At home, we should give our time to our families or to other things, not to our job again, not to devices, no to gadgets, no to emails, no to short messages. I know it's not possible, but that would be one of solutions. And of course, partners or spouse, understanding and support is essential in that feeling. And we had heard a lot of very nice and brilliant speakers here that provoked several of potential, that gave us some ideas. And these days we have practiced some of the best possibilities, like Isha Yoga, maybe very close to your culture, to have good mentors that are understanding our problems, or religious balance to find some solutions or some answers to our problems. And maybe one of my personal possible strategies is good food in good company and enjoying life. And I tried to use some of moments I was free to try to integrate your culture or your beliefs in my own future personal strategy for coping with burnout. So thank you for your attention.